The Selection, Chapter 14. As I predicted, the girls who had asked to go home changed their minds once everything had settled down. None of us knew exactly who had wanted out, but there was some, Celeste in particular, who were determined to find out. For the time being, we remained at 27 girls. The attack was so inconsequential, according to the king, that it barely warranted notice. However, since camera crews had been making their way in the morning, some of it was aired live. Apparently, the king wasn't pleased about that. It made me wonder how just many attacks the palace had suffered through that we never heard about. Was it far less safe here than I thought? Sylvia explained that if the attack had been much worse, we would all have been to call our families and tell them we were safe. As it was, we were instructed to write letters home instead. I wrote that I was well, and that the attack probably seemed worse than it was, and that King had us all kept safe tucked away. I urged them not to worry about me and told them I missed them and handed the letter off to a helpful maid. The day after the attack passed without incident. I had planned to going on to the women's room to talk up Maxine to the others, but after seeing Lucy so shaken, I chose to keep to my room. I didn't know what my three maids busied themselves with while I was away, but when I was in the room, they played card games with me and let pieces of gossip slip into the conversation. I learned that for every dozen people I saw in the palace, there were hundred or more behind them. The cooks and laundresses I knew about, but there were also people whose sole job was to keep the windows clean. It took a solid week for the team to get them all done, by the end of which the dust would find its way past the palace walls and cling to the clean glass, and they'd have to be washed all over again. There were also jewelers hidden away, making pieces of the family and gift for the visitors, and teams of seamstresses and buyers keeping the royal family and now us immaculately clothed. I learned other things too. The gauze they thought were the cutest, and the horrid new design of the dress the head maid was making the staff wear for the holiday parties. How some in the palace were taking bets on which selected girl might win, and that I was in the top 10 picks. A baby of one of the cooks was sick beyond hope, which made Annie tear up a bit. This girl happened to be a close friend of hers, and the couple had been waiting so long for a child. Listening to them and joining when I had something worth saying, I couldn't imagine anything more entertaining happening downstairs, and was glad to have such company. The mood in my room was a quiet and happy one. The day had been so nice. I stayed up there the day after as well. This time we kept the doors open to both the hallway and the balcony, and the warm air filtered in and wrapped itself around us. It seemed to do particularly wonderful things for Lucy, and I wondered how often she actually got to step outside. Annie made a comment about how this was all inappropriate, me sitting with them, playing games with the doors open, but let it drop almost immediately. She was quickly getting over trying to make me lady it seemed I ought to be. We were in the middle of a game of cards when I noticed a figure out of the corner of my eye. It was Maxon, standing at the open door, looking amused. As our eyes met, I could see that his expression was clearly asking what in the world I was doing. I stood, smiling, and walked over to him. "Oh, sweet lord," Annie muttered as she realized the prince was at the door. She immediately swept the cards into a sewing basket and stood, Marley and Lucy following suit. "Ladies," Maxon said. "Your Majesty," she said with a curtsy. "Such an honor, sir." "For me as well," he answered with a smile. The maids looked back and forth to one another, flattered. We were all silent for a moment, not quite sure what to do. Mary suddenly piped up. "We were just leaving." "Yes, that's right," Lucy added. "We were, uh, just—" She looked to Annie for help. "Going to finish Lady America's dress for Friday," Annie concluded. "That's right," Mary said. "Only 2 days left." They slowly circled us to get out of the room. Huge smiles plastered on their faces. "Wouldn't you want to keep wouldn't want to keep you from your work," Maxon said, following them with his eyes, completely fascinated with their behavior. Once in the hall, they gave awkwardly mistimized curtsies and walked away a feverish pace. Immediately after they rounded the corner, Lucy's giggles echoed down the corridor, followed by Annie's intense hushing. "Quite a group you have," Maxon said, walking into my room, surveying the space. "They keep me on my toes," I answered with a smile. "It's clear they have affection for you. That's hard to find." He stopped looking at my room and faced me. This isn't what I imagined your room would look like. I raised an arm and let it fall. It's not really my room, is it? It belongs to you, and I just happen to be borrowing it. He made a face. Surely they told you that changes could be made? A new bed? Different paint? I shrugged. A coat of paint wouldn't make this mine. Girls like me don't live in houses with marble floors. I joked. Maxon smiled. What does your room at home look like? Um, what did you come for exactly? I hedged. Oh, I had an idea. About? Well, he started, continuing to walk around the room. I thought that since you and I don't have the typical relationship that I have with the other girls, maybe we should have alternative means of communication. He stopped in front of my mirror and looked at the picture of my family. Your little sister looks just like you, he said, amused by this observation. I walked deeper into my room. We get that a lot. What was that about alternative communication? Magazine finished up with pictures and moved toward the piano in the back. Since you are supposed to be helping me, being my friend and all, he continued with a pointed look at me. Perhaps we shouldn't be relying on the traditional notes sent through maids and formal invitations for dates. I was thinking something a little less ceremonial. He picked up the sheet music on top of the piano. Did you bring these? No, those were here. Anything I really want to play, I can do from memory. His eyebrows rose. Impressive. He moved back in my direction without finishing his explanation. Could you please stop poking around and complete an entire thought? Maxon sighed. Fine. What I was thinking was that you and I could have a sign or something, some way of communicating that we need to speak to each other that no one else would catch on to. Perhaps rubbing our noses? Maxon ran a finger back and forth just above his lip. That looks like your nose is topped up, not attractive. He gave me a slightly perplexed look and nodded. Very well, perhaps we could simply run our fingers through our hair. I shook my head almost immediately. My hair is almost always pulled up with pins. It's nearly impossible to get my fingers through it. Besides, what if you happen to be wearing your crown? You'd knock it off your head. He shook a thoughtful finger at me. Excellent point. He passed me, continuing to think, and stopped near the table by my bed. What about tugging your ear? I considered. I like it. Simple enough to hide, but not so common we could mistake it for something else. Ear tugging it is. Max's attention was fixated on something, but he turned to smile at me. I'm glad you approve. The next time you want to see me, simply tug your ear and I'll come as soon as I'm able. Probably after dinner, he concluded with a shrug. Before I could ask about me coming to him, Maxon strolled across the room with my jar in his hand. What in the world is that about? I sighed. That, I'm afraid, it's beyond explanation. Friday arrived, and with that came a debate on the Aelia Capital report. It was something that was required of us, but at least this week all we had to do was sit there. With the time difference, we'd go on at 5, sit through the hour, and then go off to dinner. Annie, Mary, and Lucy took extra care in dressing me. The gown was a deep blue, hovering near purple. It was fitted through my hips and fanned out in satiny smooth waves behind me. I couldn't believe I was touching something so beautiful. Button after button was fastened up my back, and my mates put pins bedecked with pearls in my hair. They added tiny pearl earrings and a necklace made of wire so thin and pearls so far apart they looked like they floated on my skin. And I was done. I looked in the mirror. I still looked like me. It was the prettiest version of myself I'd seen so far. But I knew that face, ever since my name had been drawn, I'd feared I would become something unrecognizable, covered in layers of makeup and so hung down with jewelry that I'd have to dig out of it for weeks to find myself again. So far, I was still America. And exactly like myself, I found that I was covered in a sheen of sweat as I walked down to the room where they recorded messages at the palace. They told us to be there 10 minutes early. 10 minutes meant 15 minutes to me. It meant more like 3 to someone like Celeste. So the arrival of the girls was staggered. Hordes of people were swarming around, putting the last touches on the set, which now held rows of tired seats for the selected. The council members, who I recognized for years of watching the report, were there, reading over their scripts and adjusting their ties. The selected crowd were sketching themselves in mirrors and tugging at the extravagant dresses. It was a flurry of activity. I turned and caught the briefest of moments in Maxon's life. His mother, the beautiful Queen Amberley, put some stray hairs back into place. He straightened his jacket and said something to her. She gave a reassuring nod and Maxine smiled. I would have watched a little longer, but Sylvia, in all her glory, came to escort me into place. Just head over to the risers, Lady America, she said. You may sit anywhere you like. So you know most of the girls have already claimed the front row. She looked sorry for me, as if she were delivering bad news. Oh, thank you, I said, and went happily to take a seat in the back. I didn't like climbing the little steps with a snug dress and such strappy shoes. Were the shoes really necessary? No one was ever even going to see my feet. But I managed. When I saw Marley come in, she smiled and waved and came to sit right next to me. It meant a great deal to me that she chose a place beside me as opposed to a spot in the second row. She was faithful. She'd make a great queen. Her dress was a bright yellow, with her blonde hair and sun-kissed skin. She looked like she was radiating light into the room. Molly, I love that dress. You look fantastic. Oh, thank you, she blushed. I thought it might be a bit too much. Not at all. Trust me, it's perfect on you. I want to speak to you, but you have been missing. Do you think we could talk tomorrow? She asked in a whisper. Of course, in the women's room, right? It's Saturday, I said in a matched tone. Okay, she answered excitedly. Just in front of us, Amy turned around. I feel like my pins are falling out. Can you guys check them? Without a word, Marley put her slim fingers in the curls of Amy's hair and checked for loose pin. That feel better? Amy sighed. Yes, thank you. America, is there lipstick on my teeth? Zoe asked. I turned to my left and found her smiling maniacally, exposing all her pearly whites. No, you're good, I answered, seeing out of the corner of my eyes that Marley was nodding in confirmation. Thanks. How is he so calm? Zoe asked, pointing over at Maxine, who was talking to a member of the crew. She then bent down and put her head between her legs and started doing controlled breathing. Molly and I looked at each other, eyes wide with amusement, and tried not to laugh. It was hard if we looked at Zoe, so we surveyed the room and chatted about what others were wearing. There were several girls in seductive reds and lively greens, but no one else in blue. Olivia had gone so far as to wear orange. I'd admit that I didn't know that much about fashion, but Molly and I both agreed that someone should have intervened on her behalf. The color made her skin look like kind of green. 2 minutes before the cameras turned on, we realized it wasn't the dress making her look green. Olivia vomited into the closest can very loudly and collapsed on the floor. Sylvia swooped in, and a fuss was made to wipe the seat off her and get her into a seat. She was placed in the back row with a small receptacle at her feet, just in case. Burial was in the seat in front of her. I couldn't hear what she muttered to the poor girl from where I was, but it looked like Burial was prepared to injure Olivia should she have another episode near her. I guess that Maxon had seen or heard some of the commotion, and I looked over to see if he was having any sort of reaction to it at all. But he wasn't looking toward the disturbance. He was looking at me. Quickly, so quickly, it would look like nothing but scratching an itch to anyone else. Maxon reached up and tugged on his ear. I repeated the action and we both turned away. I was excited to know that tonight, after dinner, Maxon would be stopping by my room. Suddenly, the anthem music was playing, and I could see the national emblem on tiny screens around the room. I shifted to sit up straighter. All I could think was that my family was going to see me tonight, and I wanted them to be proud. King Clarkson was at the podium speaking about the brief and unsuccessful attack on the palace. I wouldn't have called it unsuccessful. It managed to scare the daylights out of most of us. Announcement after announcement came, and I tried to be aware of everything they said, but it was hard. I was used to watch this on a comfy couch with bowls of popcorn and family commentary. Many of the announcements tied into the rebels, placing blame for certain things on their shoulder. The roads being built in Sumner were being behind schedule because of the rebels, and the number of local officers in Atlin was down because they had been sent to help with a rebel causing disturbance in St. George. I had no idea either of those things had happened. Between everything I had heard and seen growing up and what I had learned since coming to the palace, I began to wonder just how much we knew about the rebels. Maybe I just didn't understand, but I didn't think they could be blamed for everything that was wrong with Elia. And then, as if he had appeared out of thin air, Gabriel was walking on set after being introduced by the Master of Events. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I have a special announcement. The selection has been going on for a week now, and 8 ladies have already gone home, leaving 27 beautiful women for Prince Maxine to choose from. Next week, by hook or by crook, the majority of the Elia Capital report will be dedicated to getting to know these amazing young women. I felt the little beads of sweat pooling on my temple. Sit here and look nice. I could do that. But answer questions? I knew I wasn't going to win this little game. This wasn't the issue. I just really didn't want to look like a moron in front of the entire country. Before we get to the ladies, tonight let's take a moment with the man of the honor. How are you tonight, Prince Maxim? Gabriel said, walking across the stage. Maxim had been ambushed. He didn't have a microphone or prepared answers. Just before Gabriel's microphone reached Maxim's face, I caught his eye and gave him a wink. That tiny action was enough to make him smile. I'm very well, Gabriel. Thank you. Are you enjoying your company so far? Yes, it's been a pleasure getting to know these ladies. Are they all the sweet, gentle ladies they appear to be? Gabriel asked. Before Maxine replied, the answer brought a smile to my face because I knew that it was yes, sort of. Maxine looked past Gabriel at me. Almost. Almost? Gabriel asked, surprised. He turned to us. Is someone over there being naughty? Mercifully, all the girls let out little giggles, so I blended in. The little traitor. What exactly did these girls do that isn't so sweet? Gabriel asked Maxine. Oh, well, let me tell you. Maxim crossed his legs and got very comfortable in his chairs. It was probably the most relaxed I'd ever seen him, sitting there poking fun at me. I liked this side of him. I wished it could come out more often. One of them had the nerve to yell at me rather forcefully the first time we met. I was given a very severe scolding. Above Maxim's head, the king and queen exchanged a glance. It seemed they were hearing the story for the first time too. Beside me, the girls were looking at one another, confused. I didn't get it until Marley said something. I don't remember anyone yelling at him in the great room. Do you? Maxine seemed to have forgotten that our first meeting was meant to be a secret. I think he's talking it up to make it funnier. I did say some serious things to him. I think he might mean me. A scolding, you say? What for? Gabriel continued. Honestly, I wasn't really sure. I think it was about of homesickness, why I forgave her, of course. Maxine was loose and easy now, talking to Gabriel as if he were the only person in the room. I'd have to tell him later how wonderful he did. So she's still with us, then? Gabriel looked over at the collection of girls, grinning widely, and then returned to face his prince. Oh, yes, she's still here, Maxine said, not letting his eyes wander from Gabriel's face. And I plan on keeping her here for quite a while.